Well, hi, kinesiology students. It's Mr. Krena here, and we're doing a quick flyby today of the skeletal system. The study of bones is called osteology. Osteo means anything to do with your bone, and obviously ology means the study of. So today we're going to do some osteology. How many bones do you have in your body? Well, the average adult has 206 bones the average adult has in their body. I say average because people can have an extra rib or some other extra bones in their body, but for the most part, we have 206 bones in our body. Now, when you're born, you actually have more bones. You actually have something around 270 bones at birth. And those bones, as you grow, eventually fuse together. If you've been around babies before, you know they have, especially in their head, they have these soft spots. And really, they have more bones in their head, but they're all kind of fusing together to form the skull at a later date. So that's what's going on with your body. And you can imagine for childbirth, that's a really important thing, is not to have those fused bones together. So that's you, 206 bones right now. Functions of the skeletal system. I think the skeletal system is really fascinating. I think of it like not just if your car frame wasn't just a frame, but it also produced your oil, and it also gave you additives to your gasoline tank. That would be amazing. And it would be amazing if your frame of your car, when you crashed it, could fix itself. That's what kind of like your bones are like. But here are a few of the functions, 5 functions of the skeletal system. Here we go. Number 1 is support. Okay, so just like that frame we talked about, your body has a frame to be able to attach muscles, organs to. It also just allows you to be upright. And it's just really that structure, that frame that allows your body to be what it is. So support is function number 1. Number 2 function of the skeletal system is protection. Protection. So you can think about your vital organs and what surrounds them. Well, bone. So think of your brain and your skull surrounding your brain, or your heart and your rib cage surrounding your heart, or your spinal cord is surrounded by all of your vertebrae. So protection is big, and it's really protecting those vital organs. The skeletal system also has a function of movement. So number 3 function of the skeletal system is movement. So we've got these long bones that allow us these long levers to be able to throw and kick and run. We also have movement in our trunk that our bones allow us to lateral bend or to rotate around. So your muscles cause the movement, but your bones really allow for that movement that we can do as human beings to occur. So your bones are a big part of your movement. Otherwise, we'd just be this blob of jelly sliding around. Number 4 function is blood production. I think it's really fascinating that your bones actually produce all the blood in your body. You reproduce your red blood cells, all of them, in about every 4 months, and your white blood cells just about every week. You also replace all your platelets, and that's happening in your bones. It happens in the bone marrow specifically, and that's in the very deep part of your bone, in a part of your bone called the medullary cavity. You've got your bone marrow, and its job is to produce the blood in your body. So your oxygen transport, your nutrient transport, everything is happening, and it starts in your bones. Number 5 is mineral storage. So mineral storage is an important function of the bone that we don't really think about. It is actually a large deposit keeping a lot of the minerals that we need for other body processes, keeping it stored in our bones. The 2 main minerals that are stored in our bones are calcium and phosphorus. Your bone is made up of 2 parts. One part is collagen, which exists in other places, kind of like cartilage, which is not bone, like our nose or our ears. It's tough, but it's very flexible. The other part is calcium phosphate. Calcium phosphate is the main kind of stiff, tough structure that makes our bones really hard. And so we need calcium and we need phosphorus to be able to make that. And so our bones have a lot of this calcium phosphate to them. And that's great for the stiffness of our bones, but also you need calcium in order to move your muscles. It's part of the process. You need phosphorus for other processes in your body as well. And when your body needs those minerals, it comes over to your bones and says, "I'd like to borrow those minerals, please." And your osteoclasts come and break down your bone to release those minerals to be used in different processes of your body. You also have smaller minerals in there. You have some magnesium and some other smaller minerals, but it's really a deposit for calcium and phosphorus. And so if you're not getting enough of those in your diet, that's where your body starts to break down your bones, which is not a good place to be. But it is good to have a store of those minerals so you don't have to be constantly taking in calcium and phosphorus too regularly. So those are the functions: support, protection, movement, blood production, and mineral storage. All right, let's look at some different parts of the skeleton. And you have two main parts to your skeleton. One is your axial skeleton and one is your appendicular skeleton. The axial skeleton, just like it sounds, around that central axis, that medial axis of your body, really comprises your head, your skull, and your trunk. Okay, so your head and your trunk are really that axial skeleton. So think of the bones of the skull. This is my poorly drawn picture here of the skull and your vertebral column and your rib cage, and that's primarily your axial skeleton. So anytime we refer to your axial skeleton, that's the area where we are referring to. The appendicular skeleton, think of appendages, is pretty much everything else. So it's your limbs, it's your arms, it's your legs, and this is important, any bones that are attached to your arms and your legs. So we think primarily of the pelvis is actually part of the appendicular skeleton, and the scapula is actually part of your appendicular skeleton, even though it seems to be part of our trunk, but because it's attached to a limb, your humerus articulates to your scapula and your femur articulates to the acetabulum of your pelvis, then we consider that part of your appendicular skeleton. So important thing to note that those bones that are included as your appendicular skeleton, because they're attached to your limbs. Okay, so axial, head, trunk, and appendicular, your arms, your legs, and any bones that attach to those limbs. Bone types. You got 5 different types of bone in your body, and we're really looking here at the shape and the structure of your bone when we categorize them this way. The first type of bone is your long bone, and this is your classic bone structure or feature. When you think of your humerus or your femur, that's really a long bone, the great example of long bones. They are longer than they are wide. They've got this long structure to them, and they have usually at the distal and the proximal ends of the bone, different structures, and that's really your long bone. So examples here, of course, are the femur, are the humerus. You could talk about your metatarsals, your metacarpals. Those are just easy, classic examples of your long bones. You've got many more, but those are some easy examples there. So longer than they are wide, that's your long bone. Your short bone are really like a square. This is kind of your classic short bone structure. It's really like a cube or that's kind of like a square. It's not like longer than it is wide. And a lot of your short bones are found in your wrist, your carpals, or your ankle, your tarsals. The thing about short bones is they have, remember I talked about collagen, they have a lot of collagen in them, so they are really good for compression purposes. So if you think of kind of landing on your wrist or landing on your foot, all that pressure going through those short bones is really actually it's well designed for that because of the high amount of collagen in your short bones. Flat bones are just like they sound. They're flat. They're these wide panel type of bones that are really, protection based. So if you think of the bones of your skull, like your frontal bone is a classic flat bone, and your parietal, your occipital, all these bones of your skull are flat bones. You can think of your ribs. All of your ribs are flat bones. Those are really easy examples of flat bones. Your pelvis, these wide flat bones. Irregular bones are just like they sound. They just kind of don't fit the mold. They're irregular. They're kind of out of place. Your vertebra are a classic example of an irregular bone, really kind of misshapen, can't really fit them into one specific category. This is my expert drawing of a vertebra right here. But you get the idea. They're really kind of different and bony and out there. So your vertebrae are all great examples. Your sacrum is another good example of an irregular bone. You also have sesamoid bones in your body. Not too many of them. They're not a common one. But sesamoid bones have the unique distinction in that they're always embedded in a tendon and don't really have an articulation to another bone. They're not really attached to another bone. They're kind of floating around your body within like a tendon or tissue. So your patella is your classic sesamoid bone. It's the biggest sesamoid bone by far. You've got other small ones in your thumb and in your foot. But you can really sense this if you relax, straighten your leg. Try this, straighten your leg and relax. Don't tense, but relax your quadricep muscles, those big muscles at the front. And then you can kind of move your patella around, right? You can kind of shift it. Maybe you've tried this before, I don't know. But you can kind of shift your patella around. It's because it's just floating there in your tendon. It's not really articulating like a joint to another bone. So that's a sesamoid bone. So you got long bones, short bones. You've got your flat bones, your irregular bones, and then your floating sesamoid bones. Lastly, we'll look at some bone cells. So these are the cells that make up the bone itself. So they have some different properties and they do some different things, but all of these cells exist within your bones. The first type of bone cell is called your osteocyte. And your osteocyte is the bone cell that's the mature bone cell that has that calcium phosphate and is making up that matrix of rigid bone material that makes up your bone proper. And osteocytes are there making up your bone. They also have this interesting feature in that we found that they can actually sense pressure as well. So if I put some pressure on an osteocyte, it reacts, and it will have the reaction of telling the next bone cell what to do in the process of bone remodeling. But I don't have time to get into all that. But just know that your osteocyte is the mature bone cell, and it is also a pressure sensor. Your osteoblasts are bone cells that create new bone material. So if you want to build more bone, you want to strengthen your bone, you want to thicken your bone, you replace all of your bones within about 10 years, a little bit longer than your blood, but you do replace your bones on a constant basis. And then, of course, if you break your bone, if you have a fracture, you need to build more bone material. And if you do any type of weight-bearing exercise, so if you do weight-bearing exercise, like if you're weightlifting or if you're just jumping or you do any kind of movement that allows you to bear weight, then your osteocytes will sense that, will go, oh, we're putting more pressure on our bone. We need to tell the osteoblasts to create new bone material. So that connection between the osteocytes and the osteoblasts is key for you strengthening your bones. So if you want stronger bones, yes, drink milk, get your calcium, but do weight-bearing exercise. Get that kind of weightlifting, get that movement going that allows you to bear weight, and that gives you stronger bones and activates your osteoblasts. So blast, when I think osteoblast, it blasts out new bone material. Okay, so that's your osteoblast. And then the last bone cell is your osteoclast. Okay, your osteoclast is the cell that's going to break down your bone. So it kind of claws away at your bone and will break down bone material. Why would it break down bone material? Remember, we said if your body needs the minerals that are contained in your bones, then it'll tell your osteoclast to come by and break down a little bit of your bones to be able to release some of those minerals. Also, when you are remaking your bone, when your osteoblast is blasting out that bone material, it really kind of does that. It just goes and really gives it a blast of bone material, but it's not smooth. It's not that smooth bone material that we know and appreciate. So this is where your osteoclasts come in, and they actually come in and smooth over that kind of bumpy and rigid matrix that your osteoblast has created to create really nice smooth bone. And that's why you don't even kind of feel it, because the osteoclasts come in right away and smooth out your bone for you. Also, if you've ever had a fracture, if you've ever broken a bone, your osteoblasts come in and replace the fracture, the bone material. So when your bone is set in a cast or whatnot, then it's straight, but then your bones come in and your osteoblasts will come in and repair that fracture site, and they actually produce more bone material than you need. And you've felt this when you've had a fracture and you can feel a bump on that fracture site. Your body responds by giving you more bone material than you need, and so your bones are actually stronger at that point than they were before. But because it overcompensates, your osteoclasts come in and will smooth down that site to a certain degree. But sometimes there's still that little bump there of extra bone material after a fracture. Anyways, here's what you need to remember primarily. Osteocytes, mature bone cells, and they also sense pressure. Your osteoblasts are what create new bone material for your bones, and your osteoclasts break down bone material. That's what you need to know about the skeletal system, and I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit more about your bones. Bye.